Welcome, and thank you for joining us ahead of the launch of Hugo, our third satellite. Over a year ago, who could have thought we'd be where we are today? Life has gotten very complicated for all of us with the global pandemic. But we've all been resilient. We've all come through, and after all, it's actually been a pretty good year for GHGSat. Our team pulled together and brought our company to new heights with the launch of our previous satellite, IRIS, as well as to some virtual heights with the launch of our new global methane website called Pulse. And we look forward to this launch now of GHGSat's new satellite, Hugo. So I want to take this opportunity to say thank you. And thank you to all of you, our customers, our partners, and our team in making this year and next year and the years to come a success. So despite these extraordinary circumstances, we're proud to be part of an industry that takes on big challenges and brings those to a success. So some examples this year, some really exciting examples, include SpaceX's launch of the Crew Dragon capsule, China's launch of Chang'e 5 to the moon to bring back samples for the first time in many years, Canada's participation in OSIRIS-REx, a sample return mission from the comet Bennu. So now I want to talk to you about some of the highlights we had in 2020 as we lead up to the launch of our next satellite, Hugo. One of our greatest achievements this year was the launch of IRIS, our second satellite. IRIS is the culmination of years' worth of efforts that ultimately took only 40 minutes to get from ground to orbit to start delivering some of those amazing results we've seen to date from our technology. IRIS is the first of a constellation of new satellites that will enable us to measure methane and carbon dioxide point sources around the world. We look forward to working with our customers and partners to bring on new capabilities, new capacity, and to provide new impact in the fight against climate change. Within the first week after launch of IRIS, we generated our first light image. So this was the first plume that we detected from Central Asia using our new satellite. We were very excited about how fast we got these results and how clean those results were for just 1 week after launch of a new satellite. Within 2 weeks of launch of our satellite, we had what we call our first results. And this is the first confirmation of the detection threshold of our new satellite. And we did that by doing a controlled release, which is releasing a known amount of gas and measuring that from space and confirming that the two measurements match. So then again, was exciting because it proved that we were now achieving the results that we'd set for ourselves, the objectives that we'd set for ourselves with our new satellite. GHGSat's continuing success and the performance of our sensors and our analytics for interpreting the data generated from our sensors to produce insight for our customers generated new enthusiasm from our investors and enabled us to attract new investors to raise a new round of funding. That new round of funding, Series B, was worth $30 million, The Series B was led by Investissement Québec with the support of the Business Development Bank of Canada, the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, the Fonds de Solidarité des Travailleurs du Québec, Space Angels, and Schlumberger. The money that was raised will be used for increasing the capacity of our system and increasing the analytics to interpret the data generated by our sensors. This new investment is enabling us to invest in several new satellites. And just this September, we announced a new contract with ABB to generate the payloads for those satellites. In addition, this new investment is also enabling us to invest in analytics and expanding our analytics capability both in Canada and in the United Kingdom. So not only does GHGSat operate satellites, we also operate aircraft sensors, and they operate at 2 different altitudes because they complement each other. The satellite operates at about 500 kilometers altitude and provides sustained coverage over large areas. The aircraft sensor operates at a lower altitude to provide higher resolution and lower detection threshold measurements over specific regions or for specific customers. So we operate both of these as complements to each other to offer a better service for our customers. So at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Warren Shaw, our Manager of Aircraft Systems, who will describe in this podcast segment how the aircraft sensor works.
It's still the same kind of fundamental imaging spectrometer system based on our patented Fabry-Perot system. The light comes in and you have a 2-dimensional imaging array. And so you have the 2 spatial dimensions, but kind of imprinted on that is that spectral information. So we're looking at a very narrow spectral band. That's obviously where methane will absorb the solar illumination on the ground. As we image, the strength of that absorption feature then is proportional to the abundance of methane in your field of view. So at the heart of it, it's using all that same kind of technology. So as you have that 2-dimensional image of the ground and the forward motion of the satellite or the forward motion of the plane, you can image the same ground point at different points on the detector, which in turn is sampling that ground point at different wavelengths, and you can build up that hyperspectral data cube.
The successful launch of IRIS, the results from the satellite, and our new funding announcement led to widespread media coverage. Also this year, our team was fortunate and proud to be recognized by a number of different associations and groups with awards for the performance and for our achievements as GHGSat. So at the beginning of the year, we were recognized by the World Economic Forum as a technology pioneer, and we were invited to attend their annual meeting in Davos. Later in the year, we were recognized by Bloomberg as a new energy pioneer. After that, we were recognized by World Satellite Business Week as a pioneer in Earth observation. And finally, at the end of the year, we are recognized as Company of the Year by Techterra. All of these are a testament to the quality of the work and the achievements done by the team at GHGSat, and I'm incredibly proud of our team. And here's what they have to say about GHGSat.
Today, I'm excited to celebrate the winners of the 2020 Techterra Awards, the people and companies that are leading the way in geospatial technology in Canada. I'd like to thank our volunteer judges and extend my congratulations to all the people and companies that were nominated. We're proud of everything you've accomplished in 2020.
The Company of the Year category salutes the leaders who create best practices and set an unmatched example for the industry. The nominees in this category are setting benchmarks across a range of industries and made some incredible accomplishments in 2020.
And the winner is GHGSat. GHGSat is a global leader in high-resolution greenhouse gas monitoring from space. They've recently launched a new satellite, IRIS, with technology that detects emissions from sources 100 times smaller than any other satellite system. Congratulations, GHGSat.
When we founded GHGSat, we set out to bring space down to Earth. We set out to bring the science and the wizardry of satellites and space to the service of everyday needs here on Earth. Part of that was to make some of our data public. So at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos in January 2020, we made a commitment. We promised to make global methane data available on a worldwide basis for free at a higher resolution than it's ever been available before. And we delivered that. In October of 2020, we delivered Pulse. Pulse is a global methane map that is available for free on GHGSat's website, is updated weekly, and provides resolution down to 2 by 2 kilometers. That is higher resolution, both in space and time, than has ever been available before. Within 48 hours of launching Pulse, we had over 9 million requests for information to the database behind the map. That's huge, and we're really proud of the level of interest that our map has generated. And that's just the beginning. The next step after Pulse providing concentration information worldwide is to provide emissions information worldwide. And the difference is that emissions will enable us to understand the rate at which concentrations are changing and provide regional, jurisdictional, or even company level estimates of emissions worldwide using this new and more advanced version of Pulse that we want to make available in 2021. Collaboration is very important to GHGSat. We can't achieve the ambitious results we want to achieve with GHGSat without working with experts from around the globe. So we partnered with groups like Harvard in the United States, with ESRON in the Netherlands, with the European Space Agency, the Canadian Space Agency, NASA, and others. One great example of this is how we use a European Space Agency satellite called TRPOMI Sentinel-5P to provide methane information that is then incorporated with our own data into our global methane map, Pulse. But that's just one example. Recently, we published a paper on how we can also use another European Space Agency satellite called Sentinel-2 to provide global course measurements of greenhouse gas emissions from individual facilities. Combining all these capabilities provides us with even better information to translate into services for our customers. Today marks another huge step in the deployment of our constellation. Today we launch Hugo. Hugo is the third satellite in our constellation, which together with its existing sisters, Claire and Iris, and future satellites, provide emissions monitoring services for industrial facilities everywhere in the world. Hugo is the size of a microwave oven, weighs about 15 kilograms, small but mighty, and delivers 100 times better resolution than any other satellite in space or planned today. Now, why Hugo? Why the name Hugo? It's because we decided when we first started the company that we wanted to remind ourselves of why we do the work that we do. We want to name our satellites after our children. Claire, Iris, and Hugo, and our future satellites are named after our children to remind ourselves of why we do what we do. And here's how Hugo will be working with Claire and Iris to support our mission. So 2021 is kicking off in a big way for GHGSat. We're really proud of everything we've accomplished. I'm very proud of our team. We're thrilled to have the partners we work with, the investors that believe in us and are encouraging us to grow our business. We're accelerating our growth, attracting new customers, delivering new satellites, all at once. To emphasize this acceleration and the maturing of our business, as we deliver services to oil and gas, waste management, coal mining, agriculture, power generation, financial services, and other sectors that want and need greenhouse gas information. We're taking the opportunity to relaunch our brand. We want to show the world our sense of optimism and hope for what we think we can achieve with GHGSat and together with our customers and partners in making an impact on climate change. So there's just a few minutes to go now before we cut over to the live SpaceX feed. But before we do, here's a message of support.
As the president of the Canadian Space Agency, I am proud to see a Canadian company that we supported in its early years achieve commercial success, especially when it's providing satellite data that can help monitor climate change and better understand the planet. Congratulations, GHGSat, on all your achievements and on developing and launching Hugo, your third greenhouse gas emissions monitoring satellite. I wish you every success in the future.
And the last word goes to the team as we count down towards launch.
Safe travels, Hugo.
Oh, Hugo!
Have a safe trip, Hugo.
Bonne chance, Hugo.
Bye, Hugo.
Bon voyage.
Godspeed, Hugo.
Go, Hugo.
Happy trails, Hugo!
Hey, Hugo!
Allons-y, Hugo.
Space!
May the force be with you, Hugo.
Viva Hugo.
Good luck, Hugo.
And now, we hand it over to SpaceX. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Stéphane Germain, the CEO at GHGSat.
Two-stage liquid fueled launch vehicle. Today's mission is the 5th flight for this particular booster. Its first 4 flights were all in 2020, which included our Crew Dragon Demo 2 mission for NASA in May, the Anasis 2 mission in July, a Starlink mission in October, and most recently, CRS-21 in December. You can tell by the re-entry soot at the bottom of the vehicle that this booster has flown before. That bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is the first stage. Its objective is to accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere into space and then separate from the rest of the rocket. From there, it will make its way back to Earth and target a landing on a recovery vessel. Of course, I Still Love You. There she is on screen. On top of the first stage is the black carbon fiber inner stage. This composite material houses the larger nozzle of the second stage engine. And then on top of the inner stage is the Falcon 9 second stage, which will take the payload to its eventual destination in orbit. After the first stage separates about 2.5 minutes into flight, the second stage will then carry the 143 spacecraft to orbit. In order to get to the intended orbit today, we'll need to light our second stage twice before deploying all of our payloads. And at the top of the rocket, you'll notice a large nose cone. This is called the fairing. It's a composite structure and protects the rocket from the forces of ascent and also houses our payloads. Once the vehicle is outside of the Earth's atmosphere, the fairing separates to expose the satellites to space. For today's mission, both fairings halves are brand new, and our recovery vessel, Miss Chief, will be attempting to recover the fairing halves from the water following landing. And finally, the large truss structure next to Falcon 9 is called the Transporter Erector. We also refer to it as the TE. Its job is to roll Falcon 9 out to the launch pad, raise it to a vertical launch position, and also route power, fluids, and communication to the rocket and satellite. It will retract away from the rocket slightly around the T-minus 4.5 minute mark, providing clearance for Falcon 9 to lift off. The chief engineer held a technical poll at the T-minus 1 hour mark, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go-no-go poll at the T-minus 38 minute mark. Weather is still tracking to be green for a T0 liftoff. Falcon 9 has been loading propellants since the T-minus 35 minute mark. The vehicle uses a refined form of kerosene called RP1 for its fuel and super chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX, as its oxidizer. Currently, RP1 is fully loaded on the second stage and nearly fully loaded on the first stage. Liquid oxygen is currently loading and currently underway on both stages. As for helium, it began loading before the webcast went live and will continue to top off until about 1.5 minutes before launch. We use helium as a pressurant as the propellants are pulled out by the engine pumps. In about a minute, around T-minus 7 minutes, engine chilling will begin. This is where we allow a small amount of super chilled liquid oxygen to flow into the Merlin engine turbopumps prior to the full flow of LOX to avoid any thermal shocks to the system. Checkouts of the second stage thrust vector control actuators will also be underway. This is known as the engine wiggle test. We move the thrust chamber slightly to make sure that the guidance hardware is a go for flight. The first stage actually does the same test, but it happens just seconds before ignition. So far, the vehicle is healthy. We are currently working no issues. The range is standing by and currently green for launch. And again, weather is a tracking item, but right now we are green for a T0 liftoff time. We are currently 7 minutes from liftoff. Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. In about 2 minutes, the transport erector will start to retract away and enter its pre-launch position about 2 degrees from the rocket. At liftoff, hydraulics will move it to a position about 45 degrees away from the rocket. Again, around the T-minus 4.5 minute mark, you'll hear some hiss and pop, and that's pressure venting from the rocket and the plumbing of the transporter erector. The vehicle remains in good health. We're continuing to load propellant on both the first and second stages. You can see that we've had some gaseous oxygen venting from Falcon 9. About a minute before liftoff, you'll hear the announcement that Falcon 9 is in startup, which means that the rocket's own internal flight computers are now autonomously controlling the launch countdown. The payload inside the fairing halves continue to be healthy. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather, again, is a tracking item for us, but currently we're green. And as a reminder, if we don't launch today, we'll make another attempt sometime in the future, and we'll let you know as soon as we know that date. And as I mentioned earlier, today's launch is the first of SpaceX's dedicated small-sat rideshare program, which provides small satellite operators with competitive pricing and increased flight opportunities on board the world's most advanced and proven launch vehicles. As part of the program, we also offer traditional rideshare opportunities on existing low Earth orbit missions and on SpaceX's Starlink missions, which launch about once a month. Traditionally, it's pretty hard to find affordable space on a rocket for a small satellite. Our rideshare program groups small sats together, making it easier to purchase a less expensive ticket to orbit on a predictable schedule. And unlike traditional rideshare opportunities, our rideshare missions are not dependent on a primary payload. Our missions are pre-scheduled and will not be held up by delays with co-passengers. So that means that if you're ready to fly during the scheduled launch period, you will fly. Since we announced the program, we have launched 4 rideshare missions, including 2 Starlink missions with Planet on board, 1 Starlink mission with spaceflight riding along, as well as the SAOCOM 1B mission. And in fact, one of these customers flew less than 6 months after their contract with SpaceX, which is a pretty remarkable turnaround time. We're really excited for today's mission, not only because it's the first dedicated rideshare, but because it will also be the most spacecraft ever deployed on a single mission. As I mentioned earlier, in addition to the more than 130 small satellites on board for our commercial and government customers, we have 10 Starlink satellites of our own riding along. And as many of you may know, Starlink is a constellation of satellites that can provide high-speed, low-latency internet all over the globe, particularly in remote or rural areas where connectivity is limited or completely unavailable. The 10 Starlink satellites launching aboard this mission will also be the first Starlink satellites deployed to a polar orbit, and many of the future Starlink sats flying to the polar orbit will actually launch from our Vandenberg site here in California. The Vandenberg team is hiring for a number of open positions to support our growing operations there. If you're interested in working on the launch team that will help all kinds of payloads launch from our West Coast facility, head over to spacex.com/careers and apply. We are about 3 minutes from liftoff. Falcon 9 is moving into the final stages of the countdown. The payload and vehicle remain healthy, and we're still currently tracking weather to be green for a T0 liftoff at 10 a.m. Eastern. In about 30 seconds, around the T-minus 2 minute mark, we should finish liquid oxygen loading, and that will wrap up the final propellant loading for Falcon 9. For those just joining us, this is the Transporter-1 mission for SpaceX, the 3rd launch of 2021, and the first dedicated small-sat rideshare mission for SpaceX. And we just heard the call out that LOX loading is completed. Again, that is the last of propellant loading for Falcon 9. And on screen, you can start to see some white clouds forming around Falcon 9. That is normal and expected for us at this stage in the countdown. That is liquid oxygen condensing as it meets the warmer ambient temperatures of the Florida air.
Falcon 9's in startup.
And the vehicle is in startup. Both stages are beginning to pressurize for launch. In a few seconds here, we should be hearing the launch director give the final go for liftoff.
LD on countdown 1, go for launch.
And there you heard it. That is the final go for launch at T-minus 35 seconds. All systems are go for the Transporter 1 mission. Let's listen and watch in as we lift off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
Impulse pitching downrange.
Stage 1 chamber pressure is nominal.
We are T plus 43 seconds into flight. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower and is currently throttling down to prepare for max Q at around the T plus 1 minute and 12 second mark. Max Q is where the vehicle will experience the highest amount of aerodynamic pressures.
Falcon 9 is supersonic. Max Q.
And we've just passed max Q. That is a really cool tracking shot of Falcon 9. All is looking good with the stage 1 trajectory. In about a minute, we have 3 events coming up in quick succession. First up is main engine cutoff. That's where the 9 engines on the first stage will shut off, followed by stage separation, where the first and second stages will separate from one another. Shortly after that, we'll have second engine start 1. The Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite its engine and continue its journey into orbit.
MVAC engine chill has begun.
We're about 20 seconds away from main engine cutoff, the start of those 3 events happening in rapid succession.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
Coming up in a few seconds, we should have the fairing deploy.
MVAC ignition.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there you can see the 2 fairing halves have separated and fallen away from the vehicle, exposing the 143 spacecraft to the vacuum of space. And as a reminder, our recovery vessel, Miss Chief, will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today from the water. We're at T plus 3 minutes and 30 seconds into flight. We have a couple of views on screen right now. On the right-hand side is a view of the second stage, specifically the MVAC engine. It's currently in the first of its 2 MVAC burns. This burn should last for about another 5 minutes or so. And on the left-hand side of your screen is a view from the top of our first stage looking down. The next milestone for the first stage will be its re-entry burn. Falcon 9 needs to execute an entry burn to slow itself down before hitting the dense parts of the atmosphere. Without this burn, relying on the atmosphere alone to slow Falcon 9 down will put an unnecessary strain on the rocket. And that entry burn is coming up at around the T plus 7 minute and 47 minute mark, just a few minutes from now. For those just joining us, this is the Transporter-1 mission for SpaceX, the first dedicated small-sat rideshare program mission, and it's also the 3rd mission of 2021. We're just waiting on the next major event for this mission, which is the first stage entry burn. That's going to be happening around the T plus 7 minute and 47 mark. You can see some periodic bursts of gas from the first stage. That is nitrogen from our attitude control systems. They help to orient the first stage as it continues to make its descent back towards Earth. And as we get closer to the Earth, you'll start to notice those honeycomb-like structures on the left-hand side of your screen start to move and pivot. Those are our hypersonic grid fins, and those help to steer the first stage back as it returns back to Earth. As for the second stage, impact performance looks nominal. Just a few seconds after we finish the stage 1 entry burn, we'll be shutting off the second stage Merlin vacuum engine and enter a small coast phase. Again, we'll need to relight this engine later on in the mission to get to our eventual destination in orbit.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
We are about 45 seconds away from that stage 1 entry burn. For the entry burn, it is a 3-engine burn, so 3 of the 9 Merlin engines on the first stage will relight and start to slow the stage down before it hits the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there's the entry burn. 3 of the 9 Merlin engines have relit. This burn is expected to last for about 30 seconds.
Second stage and terminal guidance.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And you can see on screen the entry burn has concluded, and in just a few seconds we should be hearing the call out for second engine cutoff, where we'll shut down the second stage MVAC engine.
FTS is saved.
There's the second stage.
Also signal stage 1, Cape expected.
The second stage has shut down its engine. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be attempting to recover the booster for a 5th time.
No parking orbit insertion.
On our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. The first stage has one more burn left, the landing burn, and it begins just before we touch down and provides the booster with a soft descent before we land. That should be starting up anytime now. And we did get confirmation of the second stage that it did reach a good parking orbit.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
LOS stage 2, Cape Canaveral expected.
And Falcon 9 returns safely once again. That is the 5th time for this particular booster and the 73rd recovery of an orbital class rocket. A great way to start off the mission and a great way to start off the Sunday. We're now going to coast for the next 45 minutes or so while we wait for SES-2 or second engine start number 2. We're going to leave you with an animation that shows you where we're at in the coast phase, and we'll see you back here at the T plus 54 minute mark. Welcome back to the Transporter 1 mission. If you're just joining us, Falcon 9 lifted off at 10 a.m. Eastern from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, had successful stage separation. We landed our first stage on our drone ship for the 5th time and successfully completed our first second stage burn. On screen right now is a view of the second stage MVAC engine. We are waiting to relight that engine for the second and final burn. This burn will be a quick one, lasting only 2 seconds. And we're expecting that burn to start in just a few seconds here. And if we don't have footage of it, we should be able to get confirmation over the nets. And there is second engine startup and then cut off. Now we're waiting for confirmation of a good orbit on that second stage.
Nominal payload orbit insertion.
And there's the call out that we want. That is a confirmation of a good orbit. Next up will be the deployment of our 133 spacecraft on board the mission, which will occur over an 18-minute period. And as a reminder, today's mission is the first dedicated small-sat rideshare program mission. We created this program to provide small satellite operators with regularly scheduled rides on board Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and in the not-too-distant future, Starship as well. These missions offer competitive pricing to our customers, as well as increased flight opportunities and flexibility. As part of this program, we're also offering traditional rideshare opportunities on existing low Earth orbit missions and on SpaceX's Starlink missions, which provide launch opportunities about once a month. The first of those deployments should be happening around the T+ 58-minute and 30-second mark. There's a view of the Transporter 1 payload containing all 143 spacecraft. For today's ride shares, there are 11 ports on our payload adapter responsible for sending 133 spacecraft plus our 10 Starlink satellites into orbit. Some of these ports will have multiple deployments. For these, over the countdown nets, we'll hear callouts for when the deployment sequence has begun and another callout for when the deployment sequence has completed. There are also then a handful of ports that will deploy only once, and we'll try to let you know who the customer is for each deployment, along with how many spacecraft are being sent into space. We're just over a minute away from the first set of deployments. Due to the nature of the payload stack, we will not have visuals for every deployment, but we do hope to catch most of them with our 2-camera views. It's also worth noting that we will lose access to ground station coverage for a short period during the 18-minute deployment sequence, and when we reach that point, we'll let you know over the webcast. First up, the deployment sequences for port C4 and C1 will be initiated at the T+ 58-minute and 30-second mark. On port C4, there are 36 Planet SuperDoves, and then there are 17 spacecraft aboard Kepler's port on port C1. And we're hoping to get
Ports C4 and C1 deployment sequences initiated.
those callouts. The deployment sequence has started for 36 of Planet's SuperDoves on port C4, as well as the 17 spacecraft aboard Kepler's port on C1. We're expecting these deployments to conclude about 11 minutes from now. In just a few seconds, we should be starting up the deployment for our customer Maverick, which contains 3 CubeSats for NASA's Small Spacecraft Technology Program's VR3X mission. It's going to be deploying from the aft end fuel dome, which essentially is a small platform mounted on the back end of the second stage fuel dome, right above the MVAC engine.
Aft end payload deployed.
And there you heard the callouts. 3 CubeSats aboard Maverick's Mercury dispenser have deployed. These are for NASA's Small Spacecraft Technologies Program VR3X mission. The next call out will be to start deployment sequence for our customer nanoracks around the T+ 1 hour and 8 minute mark. And while we wait for this deployment sequence to begin, we're going to leave you with views of the deployments for Planet and Kepler. And we'll see you back here at the T+ 1 hour and 7 minute mark.
Also signal reef expected.
Welcome back to the webcast for Transporter-1, SpaceX's first dedicated smallsat rideshare program mission. On board this mission are 143 spacecraft, the most spacecraft ever deployed on a single mission. If you're just joining us, Falcon 9 had an on-time liftoff at 10 a.m. Eastern from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It followed a nominal trajectory after liftoff. The first stage landed for the 5th time on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, and our second stage had 2 successful engine burns. So far, the deployment sequence has begun for 36 of Planet's CubeSats, as well as the 17 spacecraft aboard Kepler's port. If you're looking closely at the left half of your screen, you should see them in the background being deployed from the payload. We're expecting those to be completed around the T plus 1 hour and 9 minute mark. We've also deployed 3 CubeSats for our customer Maverick. We're now waiting to hear that the deployment sequence has started from port C3 for the 9 spacecraft for NanoRac's EAR-1 mission. And while we're waiting for that call out, the white dot on the left-hand side of the screen, that is the moon. It's pretty cool shots of the moon there. And there goes another satellite. Again, we're waiting for confirmation from the team for the 9 spacecraft for NanoRac's EAR-1 mission. And there's the confirmation for the 9 spacecraft. We're expecting to get confirmation that these have completed deployment in about 8 minutes from now once we pass through our ground station blackout period, so stay tuned for that.
Also signal Bangalore as expected.
Next up, we're expecting to get the confirmation that the 36 of Planet's Super Doves have deployed, as well as the 17 spacecraft aboard Kepler's port. And we did get that call out. So far, we've successfully deployed 56 of our 133 smallsat rideshares today. 9 spacecrafts have started their deployment sequence and should wrap up in the next few minutes, leaving another 68 still yet to be initiated. We've now entered that blackout period I mentioned earlier, which means we lose camera views and telemetry. During this time, we are expecting quite a bit of activity, but we won't get confirmation of successful deployments until we regain ground station connectivity around the T plus 1 hour and 15 minute mark. Here's a preview of what will be happening until we regain that connectivity. 9 spacecraft for NanoRacks will complete their deployment sequence. The first of 2 ports for our customer ExoLaunch will start and then finish deploying from port B3. Their second port, B2, will also begin its deploy sequence, but won't be completed until approximately T plus 1 hour and 16 minutes. ExoLaunch has a total of 30 spacecraft on today's mission. From there, 2 spacecraft will deploy for our customer Capella from 2 separate ports. And lastly, Spaceflight Incorporated customer IQPS's satellite will also separate. And while we wait to regain access to ground station coverage in a few minutes, sit back and follow along with our animation that shows you where we're at in the mission. We'll see you back here at the T plus 1 hour and 15 minute mark. And welcome back once again to the Transporter-1 mission. We're in the middle of deploying 133 small sats for commercial and government customers. We're expecting to reconnect with the ground station in just a few seconds, and we should be hearing callouts for the deployments that we didn't see, and these callouts should be happening back-to-back once we reconnect. During this blackout period, we also were able to recover both fairing halves, and they are safely on board our ships. And the callouts for the satellites should be happening around the T+1 hour and 1 hour, 15 minutes, and 50-second mark.
Acquisition signal Cordova.
Deployments confirmed on ports C3, B3, C5, B1, and C6. Port B2 deployment sequence initiated and confirmed.
So we did get some confirmations. We should have some more callouts happening in just a few seconds here, and I'll summarize once all of the callouts are done.
Port A4 deployment confirmed. Port A2 deployment confirmed. Port B2 deployment sequence complete.
It sounds like we've gotten all the callouts. I'm going to go ahead and recap all the different ports. So from port C3, the NanoRacks EAR-Ease 1 mission's 9 payloads have deployed. From port B3 and B2, the ExoPort 1 spacecraft deployed with 2 ICE-I radar imaging satellites aboard, and ExoPort 2 with 28 spacecraft from the DLR ICE-I Nanoavionics Swarm and TU Dresden began its deployment. From port C5 and C6, deployed 1 small sat each for our customer Capella. From port B1, the Spaceflight Incorporated customer's IQPS satellite has also deployed. And from port A4, SpaceX Spaceflight Incorporated's Sherpa FX-1 spacecraft has deployed with its 13 spacecraft on board. From port B2, the final small sats for EXO launch have now deployed, making for a total of 30 on today's mission. And from port A2, D-Orbit's Pulse mission with its 20 spacecraft on board has also deployed. And that will conclude the rideshare portion of the mission. With these deployments behind us, we are now going to enter another short coast phase before deploying our 10 Starlink satellites. So sit tight, enjoy the music, and we'll be back at the T+1 hour and 30-minute mark. We'll see you then.
Acquisition of signal, Pogo. Also signals 12 art as expected. Acquisition of signal, New Hampshire.
Welcome back to the webcast for SpaceX's Transporter-1 mission. If you're just joining us, we are close to the end of today's mission, which launched this morning from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida at 10 a.m. Eastern. We then had 2 successful ignitions and shutdown of the second stage Merlin vacuum engine, then successful deployment of our 133 spacecraft for our commercial and government customers. We were also able to successfully recover our first stage for a 5th time on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, and recover both fairing halves from the water. Coming up, we'll have the deployment of our 10 Starlink satellites. It's going to be the first set of Starlink satellites deployed to a polar orbit, and that should be happening in about 30 seconds. And there's a view of the second stage. That right there is a view of the Starlink satellites to the right-hand side. It looks like we lost a signal on the second stage. Hopefully we can get that back. If we don't have views of the second stage, we should get confirmation via the callouts of deployments of those Starlink satellites.
Expected. Partial data back from New Hampshire.
And there goes the 10 Starlink satellites, the first set to go to a polar orbit. With those 10, that is 143 spacecraft deployed on a single mission, the most ever. Pretty awesome. With that said, that will be bringing our webcast to an end. We would like to thank all of our rideshare customers for their support on today's mission. We'd also like to thank the United States Air Force for range support, as well as the Federal Aviation Administration for licensing. Continue to follow us on SpaceX.com for future missions and milestones, as well as our Twitter and Instagram profiles. And if you are excited about what you've seen today and want to join our team, visit SpaceX.com/careers to learn more about working at SpaceX. Thank you to all of our viewers for your continued support, and have a wonderful rest of the day.